Hey, what's up everybody, it's Jason. Welcome back to the channel. I hope you're doing well. Today I've got a brand new album review for you, and this time it's the latest from Miley Cyrus, Plastic Hearts. So if you had told me like 6 months ago that Miley Cyrus was coming out with a brand new album and that it was going to be a rock album, I would have called you Charles Barkley, because you crazy. But of course here we are, and it's safe to say that Plastic Hearts is without a doubt a rock album, and actually a fantastic one. A lot of the tracks off this album seem to have been inspired by the rock and alternative rock of the late 70s, the 80s, and just, a dash of 90s grunge in there as well. And I think the fact that you can trace back the inspirations for this album so clearly is really just one of the things that makes it so great. And I think it's also safe to say that this album comes from a place of passion for Miley Cyrus. I mean, she has Billy Idol and Joan Jett featuring on some of the tracks of this album. So it really feels like she's taken her love of music and just made basically an 80s rock album in her own vision, and as a listener, I couldn't be happier with the results. So the first song I want to talk about off the album is the title track, Plastic Hearts. So Plastic Hearts is actually by far my favorite song off the album, not because the other songs are bad by comparison, but just because I think Plastic Hearts is that good. First of all, it has bongos, which just as a whole have been shunned for some reason in the musical industry today, so they bring them back. And there's also just so many elements in this song that work so well together. First of all, the vocal performance from Miley Cyrus, especially in the chorus, she has this really raspy quality to her voice that just screams rock star. And she utilizes that raspy quality throughout a couple of songs on the album, and if nothing else, I think Plastic Hearts should prove what a chameleon Miley Cyrus is when it comes to vocal talent. We've seen her go from pop to really soft power ballads and now to rock just effortlessly. And of course, in Plastic Hearts, the song, her voice is strong, powerful, gravelly, everything you would want it to be in like this 80s rock homage song. And the other thing that really worked for me in this song was the instrumentation and production behind it, especially the bass line and the chorus. I felt like that was really the driving factor instrumentation-wise in this song. And of course, that guitar solo is just like copy and paste 80s. It even does that thing where it takes the vocal melody of that song and then plays it back at the end of the solo in different pitches. I loved everything about the song. Couldn't say enough great things about it. Next thing I want to talk about from the album is Angels Like You. For me, Angels Like You is nearly a perfect power ballad. I remember a while ago watching an interview with Steven Tyler, the lead singer of Aerosmith, when they were producing that song for the movie Armageddon, I Don't Want to Miss a Thing. He was talking about in that interview, and I don't know why I'm remembering this now, but he was talking about in that interview how he felt like I Don't Want to Miss a Thing could have been completely different because they thought the era of power ballads was really over. And maybe it did end after I Don't Want to Miss a Thing. It's just, of course, lost that kind of popularity, but it's back. Angels Like You just has everything you could ever want in a power ballad. Of course, it starts off nice and slow and then builds to a big musical climax. It even, between the end of a chorus and the beginning of a new verse, has that thing where the guitar kind of mimics, again, kind of like in Plastic Hearts, the hook of the song as Miley Cyrus kind of harmonizes over top of it. Again, just a lot of nuances that mimic almost precisely what 80s rock, 70s rock was about, and it's done so well and with so much taste and respect for the history from which it's derived. And aside from the vocal and instrumental power of the song, I think lyrically it also has a lot to offer. It tells a very cohesive story in the amount of time that it has, and it kind of gets to you. It's about a person who's in love with somebody, but they obviously know they shouldn't be in love with that person because that person is so much better than they are. It's just that classic like tortured soul thing that everyone was a sucker for back then and probably still today. Just again, same with Plastic Hearts, there's just not enough good things I could say about Angels Like You. The next two songs I want to talk about off the album are Nightcrawling and Bad Karma. The reason I wanted to call out these two songs specifically were because Nightcrawling features Billy Idol and Bad Karma features Joan Jett and the Blackhearts. Also in the credits of this song, it's actually written featuring Joan Jett and the Blackhearts. I just love that it's a whole band and she didn't just take Joan Jett, because once a band, always a band. Having these artists on the album, Billy Idol, Joan Jett, and the Blackhearts, just again shows how much respect and reverence Miley Cyrus must have for music of that kind of era. And of course, those songs kind of stand on their own merits as well. I think Nightcrawling I enjoyed a little bit more than Bad Karma because when believe it or not, by the time I started hearing the first verse and just the opening instrumentation for Nightcrawling, I was like, Billy Idol would have been perfect on this song. And of course, by the second verse, he comes in and it's just like, that's never happened to me before, where I was like, oh, I wish this song was like a certain way, and then all of a sudden it just is because that's how it already was. And I gotta say, Billy Idol still got it in a very classic Billy Idol style. He starts off the song kind of low gothic, really like back in the throat stuff, and then by the end, he and Miley Cyrus together are belting it out, and it's so wonderful to hear kind of not only the song itself, but I mean, just to be in that booth, maybe socially distanced, but to be in that booth where you're singing with one of your music idols. It must have been an amazing experience, and it comes across on the record. It really does. Now, Bad Karma I didn't like as much as Nightcrawling, just because I felt like the verses leading up to the bridge, which was my favorite part of the song, were a little bit sleepier. And it's also kind of odd because I didn't realize this at first, but Joan Jett and Miley Cyrus in this song especially have very similar sounding voices. Between the two verses, the first one is by Miley Cyrus, the first verse, and the second is by Joan Jett, I believe. But there's very little distinction between their voices. I think Joan Jett's is a little bit perhaps more mature. It has almost that kind of smoky quality to it. And also, just throwing this out there, I don't know if Joan Jett has kind of a copyright on her look, like her overall look, but I think it's about time to sue Miley Cyrus for it. But again, overall, it's just really cool when artists are able to collaborate with people that they just have had so much respect for and inspired them throughout their own musical careers. And that's what those two songs really offered for me. But with all that said, unfortunately, all good things do have to come to an end, because, believe it or not, there were a couple of things I actually disliked about Plastic Hearts. And I guess I should specify at this point that it's not that there was like a single problem or a few problems that kind of ran throughout each of the tracks on this album. For me personally, it was just 2 songs off this album that I didn't enjoy, that I really wish I could have enjoyed, just so I could say that this is like a really, like a near perfect album. Loved every bit of it, but unfortunately, Gimme What I Want and Hate Me stopped that from happening. It's not that those 2 songs are bad necessarily, but I think especially in comparison to the other songs off the album, they really lack a little bit of something. To me, for both of those songs, actually, it was just kind of an issue of them being formulaic. If we take Gimme What I Want, for example, in the first verse of that song, there's this kind of electric pulsating beat that runs in the background, but then, predictably, kind of by the time we get to the pre-chorus of that song, that beat drops out, and it's just basically Miley Cyrus singing very quietly until we get into the chorus, which like explodes, and all this, like the drums come in, the beat comes back, all this stuff, and it felt very safe, very predictable. And it's kind of the same thing in Hate Me. That song follows a different path in terms of sound. It sounds more like a Blondie early 90s rock song, but it's the same thing where it's just, there was no surprises in the verse or the pre-chorus or the chorus. It all flowed a little bit too easy from one to the next, and it's not tiresome to listen to, but it just felt like it wasn't as exciting to listen to as the other songs. Even within the sound that song created for itself, it just felt like the safe path was taken at every chance they could. And then actually, to go back to Give Me What I Want, because this problem was unique to that song, the chorus of that song just felt very overproduced. I think it's the only song on this album that feels this way. Because like I said, the electric beat kind of comes back and the drums come in, and there's also this really odd fuzzy noise I feel like I heard in the background. Like I said, it's the only song on the album that does it, but it's really kind of overwhelming and a little bit distracting. It just doesn't feel like it had the quality that the other songs had. It feels a little bit distorted, a little messy, and maybe that's what they were going for. Of course, we never know the intent of the creators of any sort of art form, but to me as a listener, it wasn't something that I was able to enjoy. But overall, as you could probably already tell, I was a huge fan of Plastic Hearts. I really love the album, and I think this is Miley Cyrus's best work yet. As I've already said probably several times in this review by now, I just love that she was able to kind of harness the sound of 80s rock and then put her own spin on it, create those kinds of songs in her own vision, and the whole album kind of captures this rebellious spirit that I just kind of fell in love with, I guess. From the vocal performances to the instrumentation, production, and lyrics of this album, I think there were very few faults to be found in Plastic Hearts, and with that, I'm going to give Plastic Hearts an A. Alright, so that's going to do it for this review. Thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to let me know what you thought of this album, or any of Miley Cyrus's work really, down in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, please like or subscribe below. It really helps out the channel. And until next time, stay safe, be kind. Thank you.